Welcome to this wonderful platform. Professor Morris, thank you for hosting us. I'm really excited about this collaboration, and I want to pick up on your opening words. You say it's exciting for society, it's exciting for mobility as a whole. The one thing you forgot, actually, it's exciting for South Africa. And that's probably why we're here today, because we're at a crucial junction in time to drive the EV revolution for the South African market. And that's why we as Mercedes-Benz also have picked up on this topic. Because yes, granted, South Africa is probably more at the tail end of this development, but we've got a huge opportunity here. Because yes, the timing is right. Yes, we can learn from other markets, from other countries, and it's a crucial point in time to really make an impact on the market, because the automotive industry is so vitally important for South Africa, and also mobility in the context of South Africa is crucially important that we get it right. And that's why we want to have this platform, because all stakeholders need to contribute to this revolution into the new age of e-mobility, and getting all stakeholders to contribute to find the right path. That's important. And with that, I'm looking forward to a fascinating discussion about a fascinating topic and lots of opportunities.
Thank you, Mark, and welcome. And this is Mark's first time here at GIBS, and hopefully not the last time. Mark, tell us, why are you so excited about EV? And in answering that question, please tell us a little bit more about yourself, because if we're going to be in conversation, we don't want to be talking to the corporation, we want to be talking to the human being.
Okay, well, talking to the human being, my name is Mark Rain, as known now. I need to add, I grew up in South Africa, but I've been abroad for 20 years now. And I've been working in markets like South Korea, like Southeast Asia, like the Middle East. And I've seen what e-mobility can do to a market and what speed that can pick up, especially in my last market in South Korea, which is probably at the forefront of this development. And for me, why I'm also so excited about this topic is because I strongly believe that the prerequisites in South Africa, even though we might not see it at this moment right now, are so perfect in order to go into the electric vehicle age. Because I always say, South Africa, because of its circumstances, had to look at energy supply and electricity supply. And especially for the Mercedes-Benz clientele, I always say 50% are either off the grid or looking to go off the grid. And only if that train of thought happens, e-mobility makes sense. But you need sustainable energy, or let's say solar energy solutions, and also to make the EV mobility topic work.
So it's quite an interesting intersection of topics and interests. It's about seeing where EV has worked in some markets. It's about understanding the energy complex and how that impacts on the EV market. But for me, what I'm going to pick up on, hopefully in other spaces, is also about this notion of equality, all right? Because I am concerned about the EV market being an elite market as opposed to an inclusive market. Mike, tell us about this amazing association that you represent, and why the association is so positively, because I've read a little bit about NAMSA and what you guys are doing, why your association is so positively disposed towards EV.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Prof. And very good morning to everyone and my colleagues on the panel. My name is Michael Mabasa. I'm the Chief Executive of NAMSA, which is the Automotive Business Council. NAMSA has been in the market now for about 87 years. So we're not a young organization. As you know, the industry in South Africa, it's more than 127 years old. When the first car was actually brought into the country, ironically, a Mercedes-Benz called the Benz Velo. And that particular vehicle, unfortunately, burned down a year later when it came into South Africa. Historians who obviously follow the automotive industry very carefully reminds us that it was that burning of the Benz Velo that actually sparked the passion for automotive in the country. Because since then, South Africans are absolutely passionate about cars. Whether it's a level entry vehicle or a high-end luxury vehicle that Mark is obviously making available in the market, we are simply passionate about vehicles. From a NAMSA point of view, obviously we play a very significant role in the economic life of the country. We represent 49 brands that are in South Africa today. Those who are doing business in the passenger vehicle space, in the light commercial vehicle space, and also in our heavy commercial vehicle space, particularly your buses and trucks. And ideally, our biggest mandate is obviously to look at all the non-competitive aspects of the industry so that we can really be able to re-energize how we can be able to contribute meaningfully to the development and growth of the automotive industry in South Africa. I'm sure you know, Prof, that the industry currently contributes just above 5% to the GDP. It is our view that that number is actually hugely understated because the contribution that we are currently calculating only focuses on vehicle manufacturing and retail. It does not look at the entire value chain in terms of your after sales, in terms of banks, in terms of insurance companies, because all the 4 major banks in the country, for an example, are financing our vehicles and they're contributing through that contribution to our economy as well. So, the industry is contributing immensely, and NAMSA is obviously the driving force to become a glue, to be able to get Mark to speak to his counterpart from BMW and talk about how they can be able to drive a growth for South African market in a manner that is not competitive, in that particular way.
Collins Makado from KPMG, you are grappling with these issues as a consultant. Help us to understand some of the highlights, the key trends that are driving this potential or actual move to EV.
Thanks, Prof, and good morning to everyone. What we're seeing globally, and we're connected to many markets that are strong automotive markets, we're seeing a big surge towards electric vehicles. And I think just to the point of passenger vehicles, there are multiple segments within this electric mobility that we need to consider, not just passenger vehicles and talking to the issue around elite passenger vehicles, but buses, two-wheelers, three-wheelers that are growing segment. And in fact, we're seeing globally there's about
And golf carts.
Absolutely, golf carts for the elite as well. But we're seeing a surge globally, which is differentiated. So in different markets, different things are happening. There's large growth in terms of buses, vehicles, at a passenger segment, but also at two-wheelers and three-wheelers, as I've said, especially in countries such as India. We're seeing in China large growth in terms of passenger vehicles. But within that passenger vehicle segment, there are multiple levels. And I think we need to take a broader ecosystem view of how we can develop these multiple opportunities, because they're not one opportunity in one segment. It's about looking at the whole value chain, looking at the broader ecosystem, and looking at how South Africa can generate value for itself across those areas.
As I introduced my label, we have a situation where there was a time when the golden number was 1.2 million vehicles. That was the dream that we were going for. We're lucky to be hitting 650,000 vehicles and holding on to that. And that's, I suppose, a story of our growth trajectory in the country, the shape of our economy in terms of the people, earning capacity. And on top of that, quite 150,000 direct jobs that are at risk as a consequence of this move towards clean energy, particularly in our large trade partners in Europe. And we read from people like David and others that if we don't get this right, we only have about 7-8 years to have a plan. So just pretend they're not here. It's just you and I. Do we have a plan?
Okay. Can I at least introduce myself?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, the smartest person on the panel. And I say this not facetiously, but because it is true. Ask my former chair sitting there, Futi. Women outperform men at high school, at university, by a mile. So I can say this factually, that this is the smartest person on the panel. So my label, my PJ Thompson people. Yeah. Welcome, my label.
No, thank you.
Let's give a big round of applause, everyone.
Thank you very much. And as I've been duly introduced, my name is Malevo Mavija Thompson, and I'm actually quite happy to be in this panel because, I mean, I'm sure the ladies here will agree that one of the things the automotive sector has to get right is actually to leverage on exactly what he has said about ensuring that the creativity of women it's also seen and used at the highest levels of decision making. Because when we do that, that's how we grow our economies, and that's how our economies reflect who live in the world that we're operating in. I'm a public servant at the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. I'm responsible for industrial financing. This is where we de-risk projects, and with the support that we offer for investment, we are helping companies bring their investment propositions to fruition much quicker. And hopefully now, as we're going to get into this discussion, we're going to hear also how the support that we're going to offer is going to lead us very close to NEV production in South Africa. You asked whether there's a plan. In answering that, I'll start by saying that one of the concerns, and you're correct about that concern, about EVs being elitist, it's just based on the fact that we're looking on the kind of market side of issues, but not looking at the production side of issues. Because if those EVs are produced by an average worker in South Africa, if they bring value to an average family in South Africa, then that argument is somewhat neutralized by the fact that the value of that EV is not completely accruing to just the elite in South Africa. That is why part of the plan that has already been communicated to the sector.
Is that through the green paper?
It's through the green paper and through several rounds of discussions that have taken place beyond that green paper, is that we're saying as South Africa that it is important that our transition is not just led by importation of EVs into the market, because we will be dealing with that issue that you're raising. And then on the other end, we will be dealing possibly with a reduced volume, which will have implication for jobs. So the elitist argument on EVs will be highly heightened if we go that route. And we've agreed with the sector that it is going to be production-led, which means that we have to continue to produce in South Africa at least the volumes. I hear you about the dream, at least the volumes that we are producing now, and then hopefully take it up a notch through the automotive program that we have in place.
When I think about the plan, there's the cost of transition.
Yeah.
All right. From, I think this is so ironic. It's called ICE. Do you guys know what ICE stands for? But it's not ICE. It's hot, but it's called ICE. It's internal combustion engine, right? So they move from ICE to EV.
Yeah.
At the low end, there's a premium of 12%. That's for the trucks and all of that. But at the high end, where we are talking, there's a premium of 50%. Right? So in other words, it's 50% more expensive for me to switch from an ICE vehicle, Mercedes vehicle, to an EV Mercedes vehicle. Right? Surely one of the dilemmas in the plan at a consumer level is making sure that that premium narrows so that it is possible for the ordinary consumer at a private individual level, whether at a business level, at a commercial level, whatever the case might be, will be incentivized to go over the line and actually make the business case to make the switch. What are manufacturers like Mercedes-Benz doing to close that premium, that transition premium that currently exists?
So, ladies and gentlemen, I need to add before I answer that question Morris and I agreed we're going to be controversial. And by answering this question in a controversial way, I'll say I completely disagree with you.
Go for it.
Because the premium is actually not 50%, because mostly when we look at electric vehicles at this given time, we're looking at the price tag. And the right way to look at it is actually at cost of ownership. And yes, at the moment still, electric vehicles are more expensive in the purchase price than the internal combustion engine, the ICE vehicle. I think that's going to dilute over time because of the scalability of it. But if you look at the cost of ownership, you purchase a vehicle and 90% of customers in South Africa finance vehicles, meaning they've got a monthly installment. On top of that, they pay additional costs like insurance, but a huge cost item is actually the cost of fuel. And as we all know, this year alone, the cost of fuel has gone up by 34.5%. Now, if you look at an electric
But the cost of electricity is going up by 30% as well. So it seems kind of equal going forward.
13% to be controversial again. But, and that's where I want to lead to actually. It's still, even in the given context, even if you're not tapping into solar, it's cheaper to run an electric vehicle than an internal combustion engine vehicle. But this entire system only works if we look at renewable energies, and in the South African context, mostly solar energy. So it has to go hand in hand. And that's why I say the prerequisites in the South African market are so much more given than, for instance, in Europe, where people are just getting into touch with this topic since the Ukraine-Russia situation, where they are actually looking at where is electricity or energy coming from. And I want to add one point in terms of the equality topic. I fully agree with you, Malebo, and I'm happy to hear your statements on it. In addition to it, in order to get transformation right, you need early adapters. And we as a brand want to drive that development, kind of spark that fire for those early adapters. Because with that, charging infrastructure will come up. With that, the service industry, the after-sales industry will come up. In order to pave the way, for instance, for a taxi, which in future will be an electric vehicle, to have the charging infrastructure in place actually to run.
My understanding is that we used to be a manufacturing base in the auto industry for quite some time. And then somewhere into the 2000s, we shifted from being a manufacturing base to being an assembly base, right? So in other words, most of what is then produced in the Eastern Cape, what is produced in Gauteng, what is produced in Prospect in KZN, is largely assembly. There is a little bit of manufacture, but it's largely assembly, right? And as a consequence, when we then are thinking about our role in South Africa in the EV market, are we putting up a plan to continue around this assembly space, or do we have aspirations, Mabasa, to be going back into manufacturing? And if so, if it's the latter, is it a realistic aspiration?
We are indeed still a manufacturing base as a country. Because I think what we've done progressively is that instead of allowing a Mercedes-Benz to manufacture pretty much 80% of the components that goes into the vehicle, we've now diluted that capacity. And that's why you now have a component manufacturing industry in South Africa. Because when you go to East London, you go to Roslyn, you go to Silverton, you go to Prospecton, you'll see that along all these plants, we have fantastic growth of local manufacturing base, of companies that are coming in, not only at the tier 1 level, but we are now beginning to see tier 2, tier 3s that are beginning to take that space so that they can be able to produce high quality products that Mercedes-Benz can be able to tap on. Because currently, if you look at our current numbers, 39% of what we're using in our vehicles today are produced locally in South Africa. We still import 61% of the components that we are currently using. And it is for that reason that people assume that we're actually assemblers as opposed to to manufacturers. So I think there is still a very huge component manufacturing business in the country that is supporting the industry quite very, very strongly. And I think in line with our ambitions in the master plan, we want to be able to increase that threshold. And I think the timing of the master plan was absolutely timely for us because COVID-19 has shown us flames. The floods in KZN, the riots last year, the supply chain challenges we have in terms of bringing some of these components into the country have actually shown us that we cannot afford to continue to rely on global supply chains in order for us to be able to manufacture the vehicles that we have in the country. I mean, you know that we still, even today, still having a massive challenge of semiconductors that we cannot access because we rely only on certain manufacturers globally who can be able to manufacture those semiconductors in order for us to be able to power vehicles, because vehicles have tentatively become computers on wheels.
What are you seeing in a South African context about our ability to retool our ICE manufacturing value chain into an EV value chain?
And I'll also be controversial as well, because I don't think we are doing enough. I don't think there is a lot of foresight in terms of what's coming. I think some of our plans are pretty much based on the reality of today, which is problematic because we need to have a future of mobility view. You know, what's going to happen in the next 10 years and how do we transition? And look at the value chain in its, and I talk more ecosystem, look at the broader ecosystem and understand where South Africa can play in the future. And if you look at the value chain, yes, there is going to be a lot of losers and a lot of winners. And we need to look at where to play and how to win in terms of that whole value chain. And we need to do it quickly. We need to have a clear view. And I don't think the plan comes from Malibu alone. I think it needs to be a broader societal plan around.
So give us some practical examples, because I think our colleagues here, they want to be practical. We know this is a business school, so we love theories, but today we're not interested in theories, we're interested in solutions, practical solutions.
I mean, well, solutions are wide and many. We need to learn from global practice right now. If we look at what's happening in China, for example, or what's happening in India, what's happening in the European markets, skills, for example, we need to start looking at how to train people for the future. You're going to need more electrical engineers. Do you have them in the country? How do you build that pipeline? How do you build more digital factories, for example? Because one of the things that we're talking about, the decrease in the price of batteries, it's really due to overheads, reduction of people actually in production, as well as digitization of some of the factories to actually get it there. So there's a lot that needs to do.
You're very lucky that there's a COSATU Congress. So I don't think there's any unionist here in the room. Because saying stuff like that would get you into lots of trouble.
But this is the reality. And I think we need to be, face the reality of the future and prepare appropriately for that reality. And I think it takes all of these factors to be taken into consideration and transition the industry in that way. So we need to dig deeper and understand which parts of this value chain is going to disappear potentially, and how do we prepare for them and enable them to transition?
I understand there's a mining value chain.
Yeah.
There's a materials processing value chain. There's a cell components value chain. Then you get to the battery value chain, and all of that kind of adds up into an EV value chain. When we're thinking about the master plan of SA Inc., not a specific manufacturer, but SA, given where there's somewhere between 5 to 7% of GDP, where do we have aspirations to play? Which part of those value chains do we have aspirations to play in as a country?
Maybe before I answer your question, just to go back.
Like a politician. You answer whatever question you want to answer. Just joking.
I did commit to answer your question.
No, go back. Go
Yeah.
back.
So I think we must just be careful in terms of looking at our own capabilities and what the EV requires when we make the bold statements of the various parts of the value chain that are likely to disappear. The interesting bit, and I'm trying to look for my colleague from NACAM, I can't find him.
Raise your hand,
There we
Mr.
go.
Nakam.
Yes.
There we go.
The interesting bit is that although there may be in areas of risk, and because we're studying those and we're working with industry on those to understand exactly what it means for jobs, for value, and the entire value chain, a large part of what we produce in South Africa will still be required in an EV. So in as far as that is concerned, we're not at a major risk of a wipeout of our entire, possibly maybe component manufacturing capability. So what we do need to ensure is that for us to move to the higher levels of value addition, to move from 40% to around 60%, which we must strive to move to, because we're sorting out big problems. We're sorting out an unemployment problem that is kind of very stubborn. Even when you create jobs, you're not creating them as quick as you need to create them. And these new value chains actually, in some instances, work to our strength. The value chains in IT and all of those are going into a sector that automatically or ordinarily we wouldn't have linked to the automotive sector, which is our global business services. And the type of new activities that are happening there, where you have a number of companies that are serviced out of South Africa by jobs that we don't ordinarily associate with the auto sector. So the issue of making sure that the skills base is there, you can't do it in theory. You have to do it in partnership with industry, because you can't train whatever the experts are for them to go and sit at home. And that has been our experience, where you do training that is not aligned to industry needs, that is not aligned to absorptive capacity of industry. So even those things, that is why master planning is important. And I know people may be a bit tired about this. It's actually at the core of it, partnership.
We talk about master planning. So China had their master plan a decade ago. And they executed on their master plan, which is why they dominate every part of the EV value chain. All right? So the part they don't dominate is the mining side.
Yeah.
But every other side, they dominate. As it turns out, the mining is the least valuable part of the value chain in terms of value share, value distribution. Because once you've extracted it, then you have to go into the other value-adding parts. We know it's not unique to motor manufacturing. It's every part. It's the South African story. We extract our minerals, we hand them over to others to add value to them, and they sell them back to us, right? So the question I'm still interested to know is, are we still stuck in the mining value chain, or are we in the processing value chain, or are we in the other parts further up? And then in the assembly, where is the plan? Where are we going to? I'm really curious. What is the current thinking? I know this plan is not finalized, still in draft form, etc. But the white paper is not out yet. I understand all of that. So I'm not trying to kind of embarrass anyone, but I'm curious to know in terms of thinking, where are we likely to be playing as a country?
I think just maybe to also indicate there's a whole lot of work that is going on.
Yes.
In the background. So the milestones of publishing of documents and all that, it's a good milestone. But what is actually required is that there's a greater partnership between us and the decision makers who are making decisions about which volumes and what technology will be produced in South Africa. And what we need to do to make sure that that placement favors South Africa as a geographic investment destination. So that has been the emphasis of the work that we have been doing. And of course, we're working with the OEMs, the assemblers, as you refer to them, and we're working with component manufacturers. The strategic nature of the OEMs are such that if we do not secure anything with the OEMs, you will decimate your entire supply chain. And the component manufacturers have stated it very clearly that give us orders, we will do magic for you. And they've done it for decades. That every time there was a model change, every time there was a technology change, they are able to adjust. And the confidence that they've provided us is that they are able to adjust, but they need the orders. So we're working quite closely with the OEMs. Decisions are being made as we speak. That's why we've indicated in one of our policy instruments, which is the guideline on the automotive incentive support program, that we are open to any OEM coming to us with a business proposition where we can work with them on a bilateral level to make sure that we get the vehicles that we need to get here. The challenge is there's a lot of technologies. ICE is coming out. The reality of ICE coming out is that there's a big risk for us that if we continue to invest in internal combustion engines in the way that we are investing in, there's a potential for big market losses, as you have said, because where our export goes, the change there in taste of customers and the regulation are such that they want us to move to EVs, and they want us to move to EVs as soon as yesterday. And then you've got your plug-in hybrids, and then you've got your full EVs, and then you've got the EVs that link to our mineral value chain. And we want a big balance between this whole section of EVs and ICE, because where we are at and the challenges that we are solving, we don't have the luxury of saying, no, we are going just for plug-in hybrids and then we will do nothing else. We need to be able to provide broad enough support.
As a country, our biggest risk is the pace at which we are moving in relation to this evolution. And I want to stay with Mercedes-Benz because they are our hosts today. Mercedes-Benz in South Africa is producing a C-Class vehicle in East London. When you go to that plant, and Mark will confirm this because he's sitting next to me, they have a C-Class that is produced in, they've got what we call about 7 or 8 model derivatives. So you've got a C180 petrol, C180 diesel, C200 petrol and diesel, up until AMG, right? With the new drivetrains you currently bringing with the battery electric, you only have one model derivative. It's a battery, and you will not have a different differentiator in terms of petrol, diesel, and so on, because the drivetrain is the same. Now, Mercedes-Benz is currently running 3 plants globally that are producing a C-Class. The decisions that they now need to make is whether are we continuing this production in East London or are we taking this production elsewhere? Because Mercedes-Benz is not necessarily competing with a BMW in Roslyn. It's actually competing amongst other Mercedes-Benz plants around the world. And the business case has to be very, very compelling in order for them to be able to say, yes, we are going to continue to produce vehicles in East London as opposed to Mexico.
So Mabasa, when you say we're not moving fast enough, who's the we you are talking?
The country, South Africa Inc.
Yeah.
Government, labor, all of us as a country, we are certainly not moving as fast enough in order for us to be able to. I mean, take for an example, countries like Thailand. Thailand announced, for an example, a green paper. 6 months after they announced the green paper, they already had a policy in relation to how they're going to deal with, issues around EVs. Morocco, just around the corner here in Africa, is already pivoting towards electric vehicle production. In the next 18 months...
You know what's scary about that? We had 50 Moroccan executives visit us for a week last week.
Yeah.
I'm just putting it in context to
Absolutely.
what they
Absolutely.
spent a whole week here at GIBS
Absolutely.
learning about business in South Africa. And it's not a surprise
Yeah.
that they're investing heavily in key technologies in their country.
Absolutely. And their proximity to Europe, which is our biggest market as South Africa, is a concern. I mean, it takes them 3 hours to be able to move
So,
goods
Mabasa, when I heard you say
products.
we, I thought it was you and government.
Yeah.
So what are you guys doing to solve this problem?
Yeah, look, there is a lot that we're doing. Obviously, I'm sure that you are aware that industry, and I want to stay again with Mercedes-Benz.
Yeah.
We have already introduced new energy vehicles in the country. We have a C-Class that is powered, it's a hybrid vehicle, a vehicle that is not even supported through our incentive program. So industry has already taken risks in terms of producing products in the market that are not even supported as part of the broader incentive program that we have in the country. Because we're saying we cannot wait for a policy in order for us to be able to introduce, because we want to now begin to socialize the technology to our people as quickly as possible. And that's why we are also bringing, currently in the market, we now have about 17 battery electric brands in the market. So we are moving and we want to be able to make sure that we move even faster.
Let's bring Malebu in quickly.
Yes,
then
I'll
I'm
be
going to
quick.
bring my other colleagues
Yes.
in. Yes.
Daddy Mabaso, we need to be very careful how we say things, and we need to be factual when we are saying things. There isn't any car manufacturing that is taking place in South Africa among the OEMs that are in South Africa that does not receive some form of support from government. So to say that there are models that have been produced without any support from government is absolutely incorrect. The automotive industry, if you go and look at our stats, is one of those industries that receive the deepest levels of support in South Africa, and for good reason too. For good reason too. So in our guidelines, we have already, over a year or so ago, indicated that for EVs and the various derivatives of new energy vehicles, there's a dispensation for a 30% support for any investment that is made. That is why I am saying, when we start looking at milestones in the form of Morocco has a policy document and this one has this, we're working one-on-one with some of these OEMs. We're getting to understand what their plans are. We're working with the component manufacturers. And at that level, where the tire hits the road, we are looking at how do we work the system. The big challenge that we are going to face, and you're correct about that, is the potential for job losses. And the issue South Africans will ask their government is, how can you continue to support a sector that is shedding jobs and not adding to the value base? And the question that we have to answer back to South Africans is, what value would we now bring to South Africans as a business case for this continued support, which we all agree is very important?